Welcome to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast with Sakar Cowley. During this program, you will hear guest experts sharing their experiences, best practices, and market insights. We discuss investing in multifamily apartment complexes and how a busy professional can passively invest hassle-free in various opportunities. Your host, Sakar Cowley, owns millions of dollars of assets and has done thousands of value-add projects over 20 years now. So listen in for insights. Here's your host, Sakar Cowley.
Welcome to another edition of Premium Cashflow Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Kevin Gardner. Kevin is with Multifamily Utility Solutions. Their company is a big player into savings multifamily owners for various utilities, whether that's your electric, water, gas, and things like that. They are the specialized experts into knowing which avenues to go and what to do when it comes to brokeraging some of these services and finding some cost-effective solutions, whether that's even cable, internet, and things like that also. So Kevin, thank you for coming on. Give us your sort of your brief background as to how you kind of came in the industry, and we can delve into the details.
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity to appear on your podcast. My career, the bulk of my career was spent with Comcast. So when I was with Comcast, I oversaw one of the departments, or one of the departments I oversaw was responsible for negotiating with multifamily property owners for the access rights to be on their property to serve their residents. So a lot of people don't realize that that's an opportunity. And you had mentioned in the introduction about savings, but this is also an opportunity for revenue generation. And so, you can increase the NOI of a multifamily property through, increased revenue, decreased expenses. So we can actually help with both of those things. So we went out and started our own company, and ironically, our first clients were Comcast and Charter, who at that point had been using outside resources to supplement their internal ones to go out and negotiate the rights with property owners. Now, ultimately, they both decided to cut that back and only do it using in-house employees. So we're kind of out there on our own, and we're like, well, wait a minute here. We know this area so well. Why don't we go ahead and represent property owners? So that's when we started representing property owners. And then over time, some other utilities were added. So our core business and really where we specialize is on cable and internet rights and getting income for owners from cable and internet rights. Several owners were like, hey, what else can you do? And so we've evolved, and we now have an energy broker who in deregulated energy states can, put out for bid the electric and gas contracts for the property owners. And I've got I guess it's a referral program or a referral partnership, I guess, for lack of a better term, with a company that specializes in trash removal. So that's another opportunity. And so our clients are the same, but our specialties are different. I can refer people over to Tyler and when it comes to trash, and Tyler can refer people back over to me when it comes to cable.
Sure. And I totally can relate, there, Kevin, is that, some of these issues can be so complex that, someone like you who specializes into these things can come in very handy. And as you rightfully said, that any dollars you can save and increase the NOI, whether that's, perhaps increasing the revenue or reduction of those expenses and things like that. I personally know, managing our own properties, that how much of electric and gas we pay, or, we have apartments where each one has their own, cable bill. And I never kind of connected the dots with somebody like you who can say that, hey, let us come in, offer a common solution, and we can kind of bill back let's say just the cable bill to a residence, and perhaps that can be a win-win, that I can pay the master bill, but perhaps make a little bit of upside when everybody is paying me a little bit more than what I pay. So that certainly I can see that sort of a win-win solution for sure, right? So now, Kevin, delving into this further, right? So you got, let's imagine the cable and internet side of the house first, right? Are there any state regulations that we should be mindful? Obviously you help your clients nationwide. So are there any state specific regulations as to where you can apply your solutions or you cannot? Is there anything on that front we should know?
It really comes down to the individual property. I would tell you that it's worth talking to us about any property in any state. So certain cable operators are more aggressive than others. There are certain states that have state franchises where it automatically gives them the right to access, but only if that municipality or that cable operator has opted into those things. And usually in those situations, it's some of the smaller cable operators. But if you go with the big ones, the Comcasts of the world, the Spectrums of the world, Cox Communications, Suddenlink, some of those folks, they're all willing to do agreements for individual properties.
So there's no state or local county specific sort of requirements. This is all up to every every property, and you can approach any big telecom provider and see if they can give you any sort of substantial deal on any aspect of this. Would that be correct?
That's correct. In general terms, that is correct. And as we go further into it, there's different types of contracts that you can get, right?
Sure.
Now a city, for example, would grant to a cable company the non-exclusive right, a non-exclusive franchise to operate in their city. All that does is gives them the right to be on the public easement.
Sure.
So if they're on the public easement, whenever they cross onto private property, they need the permission of that private property owner.
Sure.
So if you're a homeowner and you're signing up for Spectrum, you are giving them permission to be on your property. Sure. But if I'm a resident in one of your properties, I can't grant them the right to be on your property because it's your property. So you're kind of the gatekeeper in that situation, the person that has to grant that permission.
Sure.
And so in that case, what that's called is a right of entry. And a right of entry agreement is one of those where the owner grants the cable company the right to enter their property, but they are not obligated to pay for any services. So I, as the individual resident, would be a subscriber or customer of the cable company. So that's one version. The other one, which is becoming more popular and certainly something a lot of people are taking a look at, is the cable company will offer you, the owner, a bulk priced service. So in that case, they will tell you, look, I'm going to give you something that has a cable and internet that has $100 value, and I'm only going to charge you $50 for it, but you have to pay for all your residents. And then you can turn around and either increase your rent by $75 or do an amenities fee or something like that. So they're positioning it to you as, look, you're giving added value to your customers. They're not paying as much as the value is. You're not paying as much as the value is. You're making money, and they like it because then it's one bill, one customer. They're not running trucks in and out of your property all the time. And you as a property owner is probably less likely to default on your payment than a individual resident is. So the operational expenses savings are being passed on to you. So there's a couple different things, and we work with owners to understand that, because as different as properties are, what works for those properties is very different as well. So so we really have to, we help property owners assess those opportunities and see what's best for them.
Sure. Now, in terms of, let's say, cable and internet there, right? How does that differ? Like, for example, I mean, we know that Comcast runs on a different level of service versus, let's say, the Verizon is a completely different animal when it comes to services, right? So, how do you kind of go through that complexity, or is it something that is just left to the provider itself? Can you give us some sense of nature of the services and how we can achieve sort of that savings, so to speak?
Sure. Well, in an ideal situation, you've got more than one provider of comparable services. So, there are places where there's AT&T Uverse, AT&T Fiber, and a cable provider like Comcast or Spectrum, or there may be in some places two cable providers. Right?
Sure.
So, the more competitive it is, obviously, the more, the better it is for us.
Sure.
So yeah, so we can look into that. Verizon Fios is another one if they're in the market. And the thing is that in most cases they use different sets of wiring, right? So there's different types of access that you can grant them. You can grant them non-exclusive access. You can grant them non-exclusive use of wiring. Marketing is another one. So if you are the owner of the property and they ask you for exclusive marketing rights, even though there's two companies in there, if you give them preferential position when people move in, that's of value to them too. So, it all comes down to being a business decision, right? I mean, they're going to look at your property and say, what kind of property is this? What kind of money am I making out of this? What can I afford to share back with the owner? And so that's why each property is just a little different. And people say, what can I get for it, right? What can I get? Well,
sure.
It really varies because each property is different.
Sure. But typically, let's say if you were to maybe pinpoint some success stories or use cases for that matter, could you maybe share some general example as to what you have seen and what sort of savings are typically there?
Well, on the cable side, it's more about getting money for the right to be on the property. Cable and internet is more of a revenue generation than a savings. So in the event that for example, you may be able to buy cable and internet from a company for $40 and you can maybe increase your revenue or your rent by $60, in which case you're going to be making $20 extra.
Sure.
For that amenity. So that's one way you can do it. If you aren't wanting to take on that liability of, the responsibility of paying for that service, because in that case, you pay for 100% of your units, regardless of whether or not they're occupied or whether or not the resident wants the service. So you have to pay for it. So there is a little bit of risk there, and some owners just don't want to take on that risk.
Sure.
In the case of if you just want to grant them the right to be on your property without paying anything, you can do that. And in that case, you'll receive oftentimes what's called either a signing bonus or a door fee. And that's basically saying to you, look, we'll give you X number of dollars in exchange for signing the contract, and we'll give that to you within 90 days of the contract being signed. And that's one of the ways. The other thing is revenue share, which is exactly what it sounds like, where the cable company will share with you a percentage of the revenue based on how well you help them grow their business. So, in that case, that's one where you want exclusive marketing because you want to help them push as much of the product as possible because it's in your best interest, because you're going to get part of the revenue back.
Sure. Now, speaking of, let's say, the other side, which is, your gas and electric, right? What are some top things we should keep in our mind when we are, sort of trying to leverage your services when it comes to perhaps regulations or how we can do this?
Right. So there are markets that are deregulated and there are other markets that are regulated. Regulated markets, the rates are fixed by a state board or that regulation that says these are the rates, and there's really no opportunity there. You're paying what you're told to pay.
Sure.
In deregulated markets, there is the opportunity because there's multiple providers in the market. So I live outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and I can have a choice personally for electric or gas, and I can compete. I can put it out to market, and that's just me as a homeowner. As a multifamily property owner, a lot of it is based on, again, it's all about leverage, right? Every deal's about leverage. So it's about what do I have? How much am I using? How much am I paying? What is because obviously if I'm paying more, it's more valuable to the electric service to get my business. So, it comes down to a lot of things. How many units do you have? Do you have exterior access, or do you have interior access where you're heating, hallways and things like that?
Sure.
Are you paying for the electric and or gas for any of your residents, or are they paying individually? Do you have laundry rooms? Do you have pools? Do you, so all those things get factored in. And all we need to do is we need to get the most recent electric bills or gas bills. And then we have an electric broker who specializes in putting it out for bid to see, is there an opportunity for savings here or not? In some cases there is, in other cases there's not. It really requires a lot of usage, right? So
Sure.
That's the thing that's really going to drive it, is the amount of usage.
Sure. And typically the savings are based on, I guess, who can give us the energy cheaper. Is that the primary derivative, or
Correct.
is there any other incentives beyond it?
No, for the most part, it is the rate, and then it comes down to, do you want a fixed or a variable rate, right? And how long are you willing to, it's a little bit of a gamble, right? It's a little bit of like playing the stock market, right? So if the rates are this amount now, but I think they're going to go up, maybe I want a fixed rate and I want to lock it in so that, I know what I'm paying. It's easier to budget based on a fixed rate than it is a variable rate, but it's also, if the rates go down, then you're locked in at
a higher rate.
At the higher rate. So it is a little bit of a gamble, right? It's kind of like playing options on the stock market or whatever, right?
Sure. In your experience, Kevin, do you see seasonality in terms of how these rates vary? Meaning maybe perhaps, let's say like electricity rates go up in summer, so it's better to perhaps lock in, like, I don't know, maybe January, February, much in winter. What are some of the best practices perhaps?
Yeah, there are certain times when it is better the rates will fluctuate, but some of that fluctuation is about when they acquired the contract to get that energy, and not necessarily when they used it, right? So almost like if you go to the gas station to buy gas, the price is more dependent on what they bought it for than anything else. And that the same holds true with electric and gas for residences. It's kind of like, what did they pay for it at that time? And that's kind of what drives the rate.
Sure. And Kevin, in your experience now, like how many customers you are serving, or like give us a range of like who's your largest customer, like how many doors and things like that. What does that profile look like?
Oh, we work, that's the great thing about us, is that we work with, some of the smaller guys that are just getting into the business, I mean, so we are more than happy to share what we know with people that are just getting into the business. And so, it's funny. I met a guy a few years ago. I was at a conference and he only had like, a couple duplexes, right? And so I spent some time with him. I explained our service with him. And this guy now has, I want to say, close to 500 units, home parks in Tennessee. So, now he's somebody, we couldn't do anything for him then, but we can now. Our largest clients are, portfolio owners that have as much as somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 units.
Wow.
So, we've got a few of those. We've got about half a dozen of those right now. and we're working on some big, needless to say, those deals take longer because they have more properties, right?
Sure,
So
sure, sure.
3 properties. I've got a guy right now who's got 200 units and 3 properties. I can get that done a lot quicker, and that's only one cable operator. I can get that done a lot quicker than I can somebody who's got 75 to 100 properties and 8 to 10,000 units across multiple.
Sure. There's a lot of due diligence, a lot of contracts to handle. Sure.
Exactly.
Got it. So the idea would be is we engage your services on a per property basis and kind of, or maybe perhaps a portfolio basis, and you come in as a subject matter expert. You kind of look at, what the current bills are, what the lay of the land is as far as electric, gas, cable, internet, and things like that. And you kind of formulate a plan based on what you think. And then you kind of go back and study, do your due diligence, maybe perhaps go through a bidding process with other vendors, and you come back and present a solution to the multifamily owners. Would that be kind of a correct summation?
That's correct. Yeah, and we talk to them a lot up front because there's a big difference on somebody who is buying a property that they're intending to fix up, they're intending to raise the rates, they're intending to do that and then hold it for a long time or refinance it and things like that. So we want to know what their business goals are, because obviously we're going to give a little bit different advice to somebody who is, I want to buy it, fix it up, and then sell it in 2 to 3 years, versus I want to buy it and I want to hold it for long term, my kids, stuff like that. So it all depends on what their goals are, because we want our goals to be 100% aligned with theirs to make sure that, we're operating, in sync. And likewise, that's exactly how we get paid. We get paid on a commission basis.
Right.
So we don't charge any retainers. We don't charge any hourly rates or anything like that. If we make you money, then you pay us a percentage of that. So sure. And if we don't, then we don't get anything, So, and that's what we like, is we want it to be a win-win situation where our goals are aligned.
Sure. And those savings, like typically, if you don't mind sharing, like how's your fee structure? Like, is it varied based on how much you save, or is it like a flat structure? How does that work?
On the cable stuff, where we've got money coming in, we get a percentage of that, and it's a sliding scale, so that the more units you have with us that we're working on, the lower our percentage is.
Sure.
On the electric and gas and things like that, we actually work with all the electric suppliers, and we add in a small fee on the actual rate. So it's not a separate rate, but when you pay your rate to, the electric company,
right,
they pay us a slight fee for finder's fee.
I see.
But we get it from our electric broker, gets it from all of them. Sure. So there's no incentive. We're going to offer you the best, lowest possible rate.
Incredible. Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Kevin. Is there anything else that we should address that perhaps I may not have asked you?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we covered a lot. The real major thing is that if you have any utility questions, just if we don't know them, we know somebody who does, right?
Sure.
We've got referral programs, we've got partners, we've got colleagues, we've got, we will find an answer for you. And that's kind of how our business has grown. So even if we're not getting paid, if we're learning something, it's of value to us as well.
Absolutely. It is an incredible feat to kind of know the details. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on. Kindly share with our listeners how they can find you and learn more about your company.
Yeah, our website is multifamilyutilitysolutions.com, and I am Kevin at multifamilyutilitysolutions.com. I think there's a contact form on there, or just a straight email is great. My phone number's on the website as well, and some additional information that in case we missed anything. So a list of the deregulated markets for electric and gas where we can work is on there as well.
Incredible. That's a great resource to go and check how much you can save and whether there's an opportunity to certainly, know you and network with you and see if you can bring on an expert like you to save more money on your bills. So thank you for coming on, Kevin. For viewers and listeners, I am Sakar Kavle with PremiumCashflow.com. You can always log into websites and see all the great guests we have on the podcast. If you are interested in any of the passive investments, certainly message to us or register yourself using Invest with Us link on the website. We can jump on a short phone call and see if there is a synergy, we can certainly partner and see if we can help each other. So thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Sakar.
And I would certainly wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at PremiumCashflow.com to sign up for weekly updates, research articles, and more. We will see you again for another great interview with an expert guest.